Good afternoon. It's 3 p.m. and I'll call to order the Board of Directors special meeting study session for Monday, December 9th, 2024. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Meyerhoffen,
Here.
Director Duff,
Present.
Director Martin,
Here.
Vice President Griffith,
Present.
President Sewell.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. Seeing that all directors are present, we'll skip item 3. Item 4 we'll do next Monday at the board meeting. Item 5, rules of procedure. Counselor?
Yes, according to the rules of procedure adopted by the Board of Directors, all notice meetings are conducted using Rosenberg's Rules of Order as a procedural guideline. Directors should refrain from responding directly to public comments at meetings of the board. The president of the board presides at all meetings and decides all points of order and procedure during meetings. The president is responsible for the maintenance of order and decorum at all board meetings. No person should be allowed to speak who has not first been recognized by the president. No member of the board should speak more than once upon any one subject until every other member of the board wishing to speak on that subject shall have been given an opportunity to speak. No board member shall interfere with the orderly progress of a board meeting, and the board president regulates the amount of time to be dedicated to a particular agenda item.
Thank you. Item 6, public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board?
President Sewell, we do not.
Thank you. Item 7, human resources report, we'll do on the following Monday. Moving on to action items. Item 8, Resolution 2024-29, updating and amending Administrative Code Title 3, Personnel. It is recommended that the board adopt Resolution 2024-29, updating and amending Title 3, Personnel of the district's administrative code. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell. I'll ask Oriana Hofford, our Human Resources Manager, to take this item. Oriana?
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. Today, we bring you the latest updates to the personnel rules and regulations. I will be sharing my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. The revised personnel rules and regulations include updates to existing policies, to clarify policy language, and to comply with new laws, which will become effective January of 2025. Changes to the personnel rules and regulations were made in collaboration with District Council. These changes are noted in Exhibit A and also are shown on the screen. Are there any questions in any of the updates?
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Director Martin?
No. Thank you. No.
Director Meyerhoffen? Director Duff?
Were there any specific law changes that caused this, or was this just upon our review with new council?
There were changes in the law that would become effective January 1st. And while we are reviewing, we also update any other areas that may need just clarification.
I was really happy with a lot of the language change that I saw, and I just was clarifying because I missed the law change. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President? And I have nothing further. So thank you, Oriana.
Thank you.
And just to let you know, I had Rob Cutbirth from my firm attend in case you had any legal questions for him, since he worked on this with Oriana.
Well, that was an easy. Well, thank you though, Rob, for being here. And item 9, we're actually going to be pushing to our January meeting. And we'll move on to item 10, board acceptance of cost proposal for access control system of the Nancy Wright Regional Wastewater Reclamation Facility. It is recommended that the general manager be authorized to execute a contract with HCI Systems Incorporated for access control systems in the amount of $89,581 for the Nancy Wright Regional Water Reclamation Facility, and authorize the general manager to do all things necessary to complete the project. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell. Our Engineering Manager, Eric Wepp, will take this item. Eric?
Thank you, General Manager Macy, and good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. To serve as some background for this agenda item, at the time of the bid for construction of the new regional plant in 2021, a similar door lock system, which is currently used at the MSWD admin building, was looked at as a possible contender for the regional plant. However, after comparing it with other modern door locks commercially available, staff found that the district would be better served by a more modern and expandable and user-friendly security system. So after some research, staff asked the contractor to procure and install the door locks that the district wanted. However, since the contractor was not a recognized vendor and could not become one for the door locks that we wanted, they were not able to provide those locks and install them at the regional plant. Now, after some more research, staff found that Salto, the door lock manufacturer, had the features we wanted, and they recommended HCI Systems, which you have a quote in your staff report packet. They are a licensed vendor by Salto, and they are allowed to sell and install these systems in the area and can integrate the door locks with the camera systems and the servers seamlessly. So the cameras, the door locks, all will communicate through these servers. Because HCI Systems met both Motorola's and Salto's standards for installation as a licensed vendor and was capable of integrating the control servers as well, staff reached out to HCI Systems to provide a proposal for installing the door locks. And so staff would recommend accepting the proposal from HCI Systems. Finally, the cost for this work is reimbursable through the state water grant funding that funds the regional plant construction. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Eric. Any questions, Director Duff?
A few. And they may not all be for you, Eric, so bear with me and just direct them to whoever the right person is. As far as the system itself, is it going to be integrating with what Intelisys has brought on and with our HR systems as well? Will it be tracking who it is that unlocks the door or who accesses the buildings? Will that transfer to other areas of the business, or will it just be it's sit alone and doesn't communicate with everything else? Whoever is the right person.
Well, hopefully I can answer that. In that, in speaking with the IT manager this morning, just to make sure I have my facts straight, he did say that the camera, when someone logs or swipes their card or logs into the door lock, and there's a camera that's on them, the camera and the door lock will communicate saying, "Oh yes, Eric Weck, we've got his picture at 10:42. He went in through the front door and accessed the building." There is some coordination there. In terms of Intelisys, I'm sorry, I'll have to research that for you and get back with you on Monday, unless someone else has a more complete answer for that.
Hi, Eric. This is Kirk Hetnecker, IT manager. I can step in a little bit here.
Thank you.
So the system will track every employee who badges in. It'll also track consultants and stuff like that. We have not looked at tying this in for time cards. If I'm gathering that you're looking at this as like clocking in and clocking out.
No, just as in documentation for the employee files of in and out of the facilities and their whereabouts in that respect.
In that case, yes. This logs everything. You'll get an entire history of every single door that someone went to. And the fact that it also integrates with the camera system, you'll be able to see the video footage that is associated with that badge in time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that information. I appreciate it. And then this might be back to Eric now. As far as you saying that this is reimbursable by the grant, which approved budget? Was it in the previously approved budget, or is it in the two pending approved budgets?
It's
Do you
part of,
follow what I'm
it's
saying?
part of the wastewater treatment facility, therefore it's part of phase one.
Phase one, okay. Which how much money do we have left in phase one? I thought we were tapped out already.
No, we have plenty. It's not phase one we're still within the contingency.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's enough for now. Thank you.
Vice President? Director Martin?
Yeah, just one comment to future reference, I would prefer to call this a security system rather than door locks, because when you talk about door locks, $89,581 seems like a lot of money for door locks, but it's obviously quite more extensive, more sophisticated than that. And so I just thinking off the top of my head that maybe we'll refer to it as a security system from this point forward.
Director Maya?
Yes, I understand the importance of these door locks and that, and the 89,000 being spent on it. I'm not sure how it is. We're already got phase one done with, and we're looking at phase, what, 3 for the rest of the money? And here we are still back in phase one spending that money. I thought somebody's gonna have to sit down with me and explain to me how these different phases are going and how we can go all the way back to phase one, get money out of that. Why, I thought as we went along, the money was already spent. But that's something you can explain to me another day there, General Manager Macy, if you would. And my real concern here now is getting this online. And we had a quote come in at 500,000 a year for operating costs, and now it's at 300,000. If I remember correctly. So it would be nice to know where we're really at with all this money and what phase we're on and what the whole show. It's getting to be really complicated and it keeps dragging on. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you. And I have nothing further. Thank you for the presentation, Eric. Item 11, approve change order number 1 with L.O. Lynch Quality Wells and Pumps Incorporated for on-call well and booster maintenance and repair services. It is recommended that the general manager be authorized to approve change order number 1 with L.O. Lynch Quality Wells and Pumps Incorporated for the on-call well and booster maintenance and repair services contract. The change order would increase the contract amount by $355,990 from $150,000 to a not to exceed amount of $505,990 and authorize the general manager to do all things necessary to complete the project. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell. I will ask our Director of Operations, Danny Friend, to provide you with a summary of this staff report.
Thank you, General Manager Macy. Good afternoon, President Sewell, members of the board. Before I get into the background of this, I just want to let everybody know that there is an attachment missing from this, and I'll have it in Monday's board meeting packet. It's been some time since we've actually had the original contract in front of the board. It was February 2022. And I just wanted to have the original instrument as part of the packet. I'll talk more about it later. So background, I'll start with the contract. We currently have 3 contracts under our on-call contracts for wells and booster maintenance and repairs. These contracts cover routine and preventative maintenance and repairs for our wells. L.O. Lynch provided the lowest bid for the rehabilitation of well 35. And we are here because the bid exceed the actual original contract amount of $150,000. Some history, as I mentioned, in January of 22, we went out and did a request for qualifications. We took those qualifications and recommended it would be L.O. Lynch, Southwest Pump, and Legend Pump. We took 3 of those to the board in February of 2022. The initial contract was from March 2022 to June 30, 2023. And the language specifically said the initial term is anticipated to be from March 2022 to June 30, 2023. MSWD will have the option at its sole discretion to extend the agreement and negotiate a revised price, if any, for up to 3 additional 1-year terms. The first year was July 2023 to June 24. We are in the second year of July 24 to June 25. And if we choose to, we can do 1 additional term before we actually go out and request new qualifications again. Currently, we have the 3 contracts with Legend Pump, L.O. Lynch, and Southwest Pump. Little background on the well. Well 35 is a well that it was part of the Skyborn development. The original agreement to that development put the obligation on the developer for constructing well 35. Well 35 is located on the corner of Karen and Promenade. There is an exhibit in the change order number 1 that shows a specific location. The well was drilled in April of 2007. Shortly after that, in 2008, the economy declined and the development throughout Desert Hot Springs pretty much stopped. Therefore, the completion of that well, it's been drilled, cased, outfitted with a pump. The developer was using it for construction water, but it was never outfitted, meaning it never had a building put around it, never had a permanent motor, header, piping. So that portion, the outfitting never completed. Shortly after that, the third amendment to that agreement, we brought that to the board of directors where Skyborn Development deposited 4.275 million. Of that amount, 2.7 million was deposited for the completion of well 35. And that's what we're using to pay for the cost for this change order. All costs in this case would be covered under job number 11741, which is the specific allocation of funds for well 35. Part of the process to complete the well was a conditional assessment or analysis, which included pulling the well equipment from the hole and performing an EMDS study and a downhole video. From that, this led to Kyle Groundwater, who is a contractor that is on this project specifically, but we also have him retained under a contract for a well rehabilitation prioritization. And he took the technical specifications. We put those out to bid informally to our 3 on-call contractors. Reason we chose this route is we are facing a need for well production coming up with the current Chrome 6. And this well will definitely help that area in the northern 1530 portion of our district so that we could hopefully turn off some wells here at the turn of the year. As far as the bids, we took those bids. They are in the packet. You'll see the staff report. LO Lynch is at 355,990. Southwest Pump came in at 455,511. And Legend Pump came in at 1,657,280. Not sure why, what's happening, whether they didn't understand the assignment, but it was surprised to see. In change order number 1, the last sheet of that has a bid schedule. That bid schedule is the bid schedule that all 3 contractors bid on. And then the preceding pages are the actual technical specification of what they're bidding on. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Director Martin, any questions or comments?
No.
Director Meyerhoffen?
So you have a couple other well, how is this well going to help with Chrome 6?
Well, it's going to add capacity, so it's going to lessen the burden on when we shut off a few other wells.
And why are we shutting off the other wells?
Part of the idea is looking at the solution as to what the permanent process, whether it be blending or whether it be treatment or whether it be whatever comes up in the final report that comes from Corona Environmental, who's doing our Chrome 6 evaluation.
So we don't have the final report yet, but we are going to go ahead and turn them off and continue with this well.
Well, this well is not part of that. This is, as I mentioned, this is an aid. This is not being done as part of that process. This is just something that'll help. That well 34 is currently being rehabbed. It's near finishing. Well 35 is another obligation. That was the whole reason why in amendment number 3, we asked the developer to deposit funds so that we can take control of the project. Prior to that, the contract agreement stipulated timing hooks. If you wanted so many homes, or if you wanted to hit a certain date, this one of the timing hook of this construction. And through that process, we negotiated something that was better for the district, to have the funds deposited, allowing them to continue to build, allowing us to go ahead and take this infrastructure and build out something that should have been built out since 2008. My comment about Chrome 6 is it's just going to help us because those wells up there do not have any Chrome 6 issues. They're less than 2 parts per billion.
So, I'll leave it there for now, but I'm still a little confused why we're shutting down 2 wells, drilling a new well. There's no problem with the first 2 wells.
That's not what I stated. What I stated is that we
That's
do.
why I'm asking you so we can get it straight. So I got it straight and
So
everybody else.
the item before you is not to drill new wells. The item before you is to award a contract change order so that we can rehab an existing well that was under the obligation of the developer, and it still is.
So
So,
this was an existing well and it was just turned off for,
so as I stated in my, in 2007, the well was drilled in April. In 2008, the economy declined, therefore it was never completed.
2007, we drilled a new well.
It was never equipped.
It was never equipped. We just
Yeah,
said
in 2007,
it was
the economy
drilled.
declined, it was
It
never
was
equipped.
drilled. It was never equipped. When the
That's where I'm confused. It was drilled. So you drilled a well in
we
2000.
we did not.
No,
The
it was-
developer drilled the well as a
The developer
requirement
drilled
in
the well.
in the development agreement. So the developer drilled the well so they could continue to build homes in the Skyborn area.
Now it's making.
Then when
better sense.
when the economy then started to decline, they did not move forward with the development. Therefore, they did not equip, they did not install the motor control center, the well itself, the pump itself, and those type motors and things like that. That's where when you go out there, you see the block wall and just a pipe sticking out of the ground. So what we were doing now, as that development now has continued to develop, we asked the developer as part of the original agreement to make to pay for the equip of this well, and that's what we're moving forward with right now.
Thank you. Now it makes better sense.
Thank you, General Manager Macy. I'll include that information next time I speak about this well.
Director Duff, any questions or comments? Vice President Griffin?
I have a bunch. So that means this whole thing is been paid for already or is being paid by the developer, is that correct?
That is correct. They deposited as part of the third amendment that we brought in front of the board, they deposited 4.275 million. 2.7 of that was specifically a deposit for well 35.
Okay, I just asked because usually it says that in the little front page and I didn't see it, so, but I do have a couple questions. So, on page 3 of the Kyle report, which is page 23, is this note that this well does not fully comply with California Code of Regulations based on spacing. Do we give that when they're, and I know this is back in,
It's actually
20
something I
years
can
ago.
speak to.
But do we typically tell them what the requirements are in terms of that spacing requirements?
We do actually, so it's a good question. Vice President, what happened is since it was drilled and since it's sat, regulation has changed. What they want is a 50-foot diameter of controlled area. That 50-foot diameter exceeds the wall dimension where it is today. So therefore, we didn't have controlled area. One of the options was to go ahead and put an easement through there. One of the other options was to put a hardscape through there so that nobody can do anything with that. And that's something that the district did not want to do. So part of what's happening and the plans themselves for this work that comes out of this will then get led into the final set of construction plans. And then the final set of construction plans also have the wall being adjusted. So what was brought to the board a few months ago, rather, was a dedication of the property. And the footprint of that actually takes into consideration what is being asked, that 50-foot radius.
Yeah, I think the easy way to understand this is that now that the regulation has changed, the wall is going to have to come down and we're going to have to redo that.
Okay.
As part of the park dedication that Skyborn performed a couple of months ago, and then the bill of sale we've reorientated the property itself and going to build the wall as part of this project. However, right now, all we're doing is rehabbing the well first. We will come with another set of construction plans and actually equipping the well at a later time.
I only asked because it says, it's recommended we have an early dialogue to verify that this will not present any problems. And so I'm a little concerned that we might do something where it may be a problem and then have we wasted.
We worked with the city to make sure we have adequate spacing away from any potential contamination source, and also with our own consultant to make sure that we have the appropriate spacing, and of course the construction drawings being improved that
Okay.
talked about.
And then a couple questions on the reports. So on the page 41 of the packet, we have the water quality analytical, and then we have an attachment. So there's no date on the first one, table 1. So I'm not sure what those numbers are from. The second one, which is the one that talks, also lists like the uranium. That's from 2023. Is there a possibility any of those numbers have changed? I'm sure that fluctuates, so.
So, you mentioned something earlier. I wanted just to address that. The language that's in there that is the idea was to parse this down to make it a little bit simpler read, but it took some context out of it. So that's why it's such a large packet. And I wasn't expecting to give such a background to the bidders, but that's why some of the information's in there. In 2023, we actually had the well pool to do compliance with salt nutrient management, and we had to go ahead, and that's when we did a panel. That is the closest representation of that water quality that we had. Prior to that, it was from 2006 when it was originally drilled. It was completed in 2007. So that is a good representation.
Okay.
One of the things I'll highlight in this rehab is a survey log where they're going to go through and do interval testing of the water quality. So although the Chrome 6 is not a concern, there has been talks of uranium. One of the things that you may recall is well 35 and well 34 as part of the agreement will be considered one well. They're going to be connected at the hip, if you will, with an intertie line. So well 34 is currently finishing completion, and when this is done, they'll act as one well, and that'll meet the obligation. They've always had a difference in the constituent, characteristics of as far as what they were. They've always said that there's something as far as a geological formation, even though they're in the same subbasin, that is allowing them to have different water characteristics. So it is lower than well 34. It is not, it doesn't require treatment, and that blending is what we're focusing on as far as the 2023 water quality results.
So let me just add to that. Some of the information you're seeing is how we came to selecting Lynch as our contractor. So yes, when we put that information out there, we included in your packet so you had an understanding of what the bidder was bidding on. So that explains the water quality and why some of that stuff is past tense. The other side of that is that if you recall at one point 34 had uranium testing. They have a pad there. You've seen the blank pad. It's no longer required. When these wells were drilled, even 28 and 30, which is farther north on Mission Lakes Boulevard, did have a chromium concern, if you will. But after several years of trending, they're all trending down, and they're all they're below the MCL for uranium, and we don't believe that that's going to come back anytime soon, because I think it's related to some of the water events that we've had in the future, and we don't expect that to come up. However, before we actually start equipping that well and doing the design, that's the key where Danny said we're doing a spinner test, which will also reinforce that that is continuing to go down, and we don't have a uranium issue. Basically, we know that it's low in Chrome 6. Usually those are inverse of each other, but it's also, they're both low. And that's where we want to make sure that and confirm that before we actually start equipping the well. So we're going to be rehabbing the well with this particular project. We're going to be doing a pump test and also a water quality test to make sure before we move forward with any significant improvements that we can provide water quality objectives.
Okay. And this is kind of related, but not really, just kind of because my head's going. So let's say you get a developer comes in and we do the agreements for the well. Are they doing like a test dig to check to see if the water is actually usable?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. So for them to actually drill the well that we have in place now, they did a pilot hole to do any water quality testing at a smaller diameter. And then they came in and actually put the casing pipe in saying this is what it was. When they actually did the original drill, I believe they were getting close to almost 2,000 gallons a minute. And now we expect somewhere around maybe 800 gallons a minute, which is similar to what we have at well 34. When those wells were both drilled, they had a higher capacity than they have today, only because the changing conditions around that. And these are not necessarily the most northern wells, but they're the first one that's most influenced by any water quality or any water that comes into the basin.
Okay, thanks.
Director Duff?
Mine is a little bit more procedurally, not necessarily specific to this particular process, but why are we changing an on-call contract or amending an on-call contract to address an actual contract? why is it just not a new? Why is it just not a contract for this particular well? Why is it a renewal and change order on an on-call contract?
As I mentioned, we thought to expedite the process is to be able to bid this out to our on-call contractors who are we already pre-qualified.
Okay.
So that was,
So this was simply just because they've already been working on it and we didn't want to have to put out a RFQ and an RFP.
not necessarily that. The reality is the process to go out to a bid, put us in a bid packet together, front end documents. It does take time. We were hoping to get this in place and in operation sooner, since well 34 is coming online. We've got a contract with a engineering firm to complete the design, and this project is something that we should have done possibly 4 months ago, but we had other priorities come ahead of it. So trying to get this project back online as far as a timeline, that was the purpose that we chose. I know that there's different schools of thought on whether there's a on-call contract that I could have just addressed. Like if this was $75,000 or within the contract amount, I guess we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I guess for me, on-call services seems very different than the contract for a specific job that is already known. So I'm just trying to understand why we chose what you've explained, why you guys chose to go that route. I just think it becomes a little muddy for us when there's multiple renewals of on-call contracts when it might not have actually been an on-call contract that was renewed multiple times. That makes sense?
It does. I do understand that.
It's a little muddy, and I think that with all the efforts that everyone puts forth to be so transparent, and we've been acknowledged for that, this just kind of muddies that transparency just a little bit for the common person and for our board to understand the differences between the on-call contracts and then an actual new contract. But I understand why you did it. And it makes sense. Thank you for answering. That's it.
I think we all had some good questions. I just have, I guess, it falls within the scope of the existing on-call contract, and that's kind of why it was easy to fit in as an addition rather than a new contract. Is that?
It does. We could have had any one of our wells that had a mechanical failure. And once we determine what that issue is, these contracts allow us to go downhole and analyze. And once we discover what we are dealing with, then whether we do it in-house or have a specialist, an expert like Kyle Groundwater put together our specifications, we could actually do that and give it to any one of these. So now, yes, we have 3 contract instruments and we want the best price. We've already pre-qualified you. So in this particular case, it is for a well, and we were trying to get this up. I certainly understand the perspective of the board today. What I wanted to say is if this was a $80,000 rehab, well within a $150,000 contract for well 35, under the obligation for payment by the board, we likely would not be having this, but I get that the fact that we have to bring it back for a contract amendment, it brings a little bit more attention to it. So under consideration in the future, we will look at a separate instrument.
And just a follow-up to that, I guess since this has been offline, is that the reason why it's such a large amount compared to, if the on-call service is 150, typically is a well rehab much less than this well per se?
There's some factors, but typically yes.
Okay.
So typically, one of the things that I would like to remind the board is we currently have a contract for a well prioritization rehabilitation prioritization. And in a perfect world, I would love to say that we were ahead of this and we weren't reactive, but that's the whole purpose of why we're doing that prioritization is so that we can do things preventatively. We can do preventative maintenance and do PM work, get ahead of it. We're talking about things that should be done every 7 to 10 years, maybe with a price tag of $75,000 to $150,000. And so that we can prevent major mechanical failures. In this particular case, it wasn't a major mechanical failure. It was drilled in 2000. It was completed in 2007. It was drilled initially in 2006. They used it for a short time for construction water. they were using well 34 for construction water, but we had to go ahead and take that and put it into the system so that we can go ahead and bring water to that community in that area. And then unfortunately with the economy, everything stopped, not only in that development, but everywhere. So everybody just kind of walked away. And we've been working with the current developer and keeping the agreement intact and working through negotiations to where we are today. And I'll say it's the best position that the district's ever been with this development as far as being in control of the funds and being able to do that. But yes, it's deep. It's over 14 years. It has not had water run through it. All of the perforations of the casing close up. So that's why there's a chemical rehab and there's multiple intake. One of the things is because we made a change, it's not going to pump into the system like what normal well would. It's going to pump up the street and tie in with well 34. They got to figure out the actual motor pump set and the sizing. So there's a lot that goes into what's being presented in front of you today.
And I was going to say, just to add to that, very similar when we had a water quality issue with well 22. We started with a well rehab and we did an on-call service. As we continued to go through that on-call service, it got more and more complicated, but we used our on-call services because that was available. That process is very similar to what we're doing on this well. That's why we stayed within the on-call services. However, 34, the one right next to it, got a lot more complicated, and we knew that there was actually some rehab to do. And we had to do more to it, and as well as some above ground. And that one we did go out to bid. So there is a decision-making process that we use, and this one was squarely within the on-call services, and that's why we left it that way. But yes, if it gets more complicated, then yes, we actually go out to bid and go down that process as well. Because I agree with you about being transparent and making sure that we don't go outside of an existing scope of an existing contract. So we do that.
And I think Vice President has one.
No, go ahead. Mine's.
Just to clarify for me, because I guess now that you've expanded on that, now added another question. So do we no longer have LO Lynch as an on-call contractor? Because we're now taking that on-call contract and specifically doing it all for this. Will they not be on the list of the 3 people? Is that another contract that will have to come back to keep them on the on-call list?
It's a great question. The reason that I actually didn't just make the contract change order just to satisfy the balance or the difference from this is to leave the remaining amount in there so that we can continue to utilize them as an on-call contractor.
Thank you.
Vice President.
So I just have a question for my own knowledge. I'm looking at the geologic log. Can you tell me the difference between a rock and a cobble?
I cannot. I cannot, but I'll look at that and find out and get that back to you.
And I think this might be the last. Director Meyerhoffen,
Yes.
question.
So my question is, MSWD owns this well now?
Not until when it's completed, it'll go through a deed process, just like any contributing infrastructure from a developer.
And then we'll own it.
Excuse me?
Then we will own it.
That's correct. We don't typically own anything until, even if we're paying for a brand, until it's completed and accepted. That starts the warranty period. And everything.
So my question really is this well was drilled to supply a development. Now we're going to take that water after we get full ownership of the well, and we're going to transfer that water into another well to feed the rest of the city. Correct?
I didn't know if you wanted to speak.
I mean, in a grand scheme, yes, they had to what they have been using for very many years is our system water now.
Okay.
So we've been able to, since then, we've been able to push water around our system. It's become more robust. So we didn't necessarily need to have these well or this capacity now, but they were still obligated through their agreement. So what you just described, these wells were always going to be connected, if you will, and then going into the system. The reason we do that, and we talked about this a little bit several different times, we call it breaking head, breaking it to gravity. We have a small little reservoir and then 2 booster stations. So that's what, when we start talking about consolidating wells and trying to reduce cost, this particular development had that in mind when they built this.
So was that in the original contract?
Absolutely. In the original development agreement, yes.
All right. My last question here is,
The amendment number one.
Right. Because when we started actually equipping this well, or when the developer started equipping the well, it wasn't 2,000 gallons a minute, and that was the requirement. There was two requirements for each. We could consider phase one or phase two, or the two different elevations. Each elevation had to have 2,000 gallons a minute. When they started building the lower elevation, that well could not provide 2,000 gallons a minute. Therefore, they then had to start talking about building well 35, the second well that they had drilled.
And the well needed to produce that so you could have the proper fire sprinklers and that kind of thing for the fire department. That's why it had to produce that. And the supply there for the amount of houses.
Yes, it's just the supply to the development. That includes peak flow as well as fire flow.
So one last question then, just out of curiosity. How many gallons of water was allotted to the developer for this development? Or was it?
It was based on peak flow and fire flow. And in this particular case, the agreement specified 2,000 gallons a minute. Remember, there's three components to the amendment that we talking about, equipping well 35, the intertie agreement, and then there was a third component of that, which the developer was paying for the capacity at well 42. So the agreement has taken on many amendments, and all of them related to making sure that we have adequate well capacity. All on their cost, all at their cost.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 12, award of contract agreement with MDN Water Management Services Incorporated for administrative and water management services. It is recommended to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract agreement with MDN Water Management Services Incorporated for administrative and water management services for 1 year, starting January 1st, 2025 and ending December 31st, 2025. General Manager.
Thank you, President Sewell. Our Assistant General Manager, Marion Champion, will take this item. Marion?
Good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. In your packet today, you have a request for a contract agreement between Mission Springs Water District and MDN Water Management Services for as-needed administrative and water management services. Some of the primary duties include grant management and compliance monitoring services for funding awarded from state and federal agencies, ensuring that all financial and timekeeping records are accurately aligned with the project requirements, and providing timely and complete documentation for each disbursement request. Among other administrative duties, MDN will also work very closely with our finance staff to format and compile content for the district's annual budget document, ensuring that it's aligned with the standards set forth in the Government Finance Officers Association. They will also be responsible for ensuring that document meets all GFOA stringent requirements and support the district's goal of achieving financial transparency and excellence in budget presentation. Last month, staff advertised a request for qualifications for administrative services and water management through Planet Bids. The district received 2 proposals, and MDN Water Management Services was rated as the best firm to provide these services. In your packet is the evaluation summary for both firms and the proposals from each bidder. I do have Michael Nesser, the Chief Executive Officer from MDN, here today. Mike has extensive experience in water management, working both as an employee of several local water districts and later as a consultant. Mike, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Marion. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, President Sewell, members of the board. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to address you today. Just wanted to give a little background on our company and where I've been and where I've come from. Real quickly, after high school, I went into the Navy. I was served for 5 years. Was lucky enough to have a lieutenant took me under his wing, taught me logistics management for aircraft avionics, which really changed my life. After the military, I went back to school, earned my degree in biology with a minor in chemistry, and then worked for 22 years for Eastern Municipal Water District and Coachella Valley Water District in water resources management across multi-disciplines and multi-departments, doing all kinds of different work, which really gave me a broad knowledge. I retired from CalPERS in late 2020. Since then, I've also been working as a water technology instructor for Mount San Jacinto College for the last 17 years, training the next generation of water and wastewater operators. And then for the last 3 years, I've been working as a temporary employee and a consultant for Mission Springs Water District. You may not know it, but you're probably already familiar with some of my work. I have done the general manager's report for the last 3 years. Believe in continuous improvement on that. Also, I prepared and compiled the last three annual operating capital budget documents. And we have the last 2 years won the award from GFOA. I've also been involved in several different grant projects and miscellaneous items over the last 3 years for Mission Springs. Like one of them including researching all the ordinances and resolutions from 1953 to present and developed the draft administrative code that was given to legal to bring into fruition of what you're seeing now at the board of directors meetings. So that's kind of a little background on me, and I'd appreciate if you have any questions, be happy to answer them for you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Director Duff, any questions or comments? Vice President?
No.
Director Martin?
No.
Director Mayo? Not really a question, just a thank you for the work you've already been doing. Everything is definitely very easy and concise, and I feel like it's only gotten better. I guess a little question. If you're in your office, how do you get work done with all the kind of fun activities you have
That's the
behind you?
play side of the room, sir.
Okay,
The side you don't see is the work side.
gotcha. Well,
So
thank you, Mike.
it's split in half.
We appreciate it. Anything
Thank you,
further
sir.
from staff? All right, thank you. Moving on to item 13, annual report of capacity fees and related capital expenditures. It is recommended that the Board of Directors accept the annual report of capacity fees and related expenditures as submitted. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell. Our Director of Finance, Arturo Seja, will address this item. Arturo?
Thank you, President Sewell and members of the board. This is an annual routine report that we present to the board showing the connection fees for the both water and sewer as required by law. 180 days, we have to make it available to the public. We also share this information with DBBA to review the report and to provide any backup questions. And basically, they've seen that report as well and are in the process of reviewing right now. Otherwise, again, it is a routine report that we have to present every year, and we're within the numbers as required by the state. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Arturo. Director Martin? Director Mayo?
No.
Director Duff?
Thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you were just saying? Can you tell us when you say it's within what the state requires? Because what I'm seeing is numbers in the negative as if we're not collecting enough for the service provided. Can you give me a little clarification and information on how we're meeting the standards?
Yeah, a very good point. You did catch on to that number. What that means is we're not spending as much as we have not collected as much as we have spent in capacity, which is why those capacity fees are in place. However, all of that is based off the engineer's report that says how much availability there is for us to connect new services and collect on those services to make up for the difference. We are also in the process of reviewing those fees because we do know that they're not within the standards of meeting those, the amount that has been spent to what we're collecting. But you're spot on. We have produced more projects expanding capacity than what we've collected from connections.
And when you say that DVBA is provided this and they have the opportunity for questions, have we ever received any comments or questions from them?
We have, in fact, the last year we did get back questions on some of our projects that were reported to them as expanding capacity, where they questioned some of those expenditures. And we did end up changing a few of the numbers to meet the requirements simply because some of those projects were not clear as to how they expanded capacity. Some of them they did put back, other ones we did take out simply because they were not actually increasing capacity, even though we had originally reported that they were.
Okay. I think I have to digest this a little more. Thank you very much.
Before we move on to the next question, I just want to elaborate on that. So when our finance system depreciates all of our capital projects at one time, it is not separated into what's developer driven or capacity driven versus what is normal, either operations or removal and replacement. It's all depreciated the same. So when you look at that list of all the projects, that's why you see the big negative number. What Arturo was referencing last year is there was a couple of projects that were listed that didn't specifically relate to developer capacity issues. They were R&R, and they just wanted clarification on those. So when we start going through and looking at our long-range financial plan, obviously we're going to be updating those, separating the numbers differently to make sure we have a more accurate and more transparent representation of what we need to support development and capacity, and then relating that into the available lots, which will then fall out with the capacity fees will both for water and sewer. So the numbers right now are the best we have available to. However, we are going to continue to improve them as part of the long range financial plan, but also when we start talking about a new finance system and an ERP. So.
Sorry, thank you for that elaboration. I'm greatly concerned, and I've talked about this last year and throughout the last year with not charging what things actually cost. And I feel very strongly that we have gone too many years not increasing the costs, even though they're us. Bless you. So as we have to pay the bills, we needed to be collecting that same amount we had to pay. And if we're not doing that, we have to leverage that. It has to be brought to equilibrium. And the developers will have to understand that, as we have to make sure to follow our laws and charters and only charge our ratepayers for their use. And if the developers are not paying their full share, then ultimately what's happening is we're all having to cover that. So I'm grateful, and I know that we have been in the process of reviewing those charges, but even with depreciation, I know we are not collecting what we should be. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. And I have nothing further. Aldi, any questions? I forget which way I started. Thank you, Arturo.
Thank you.
See you last time.
We'll see. Item 14, MSWD Legislative Platform for 2025-26. It is recommended that the board acknowledge receipt of the legislative platform for 2025-26. Assistant General Manager.
Good afternoon again. Thank you, President Sewell and members of the board. Next slide. Today, I'm bringing forward a brief overview of our 2025-2026 legislative platform. Its purpose is to guide and inform our legislative efforts at the local, regional, and national levels of government. The document and its directives are very consistent with what you saw last year. However, one of the main changes is that this year we are preparing a 2-year document that is consistent with the biennial session of the California Senate and Assembly and the 119th Congress. We also last year brought this to you in January, and after consulting with our federal and our state lobbyists, they recommended that we start the process a little bit earlier, and that's why you're seeing it this month versus in January. Next slide. We are also enhancing our tactics this year. Starting in January, we will be providing you in your GM report a list of the bills that we are tracking and monitoring, along with the position on each of those bills. In the past, we have provided this list periodically to you, but now we are going to go ahead and do this on a monthly basis. We will also be working with both of our federal and state lobbyists to adopt positions on these bills, which will be consistent with the platform that you're seeing today. The first objective for us covers maintaining local control of water resources and pushing back on anything that would burden or hinder the district operations or our affordability. The second policy guards against measures that may impede the district's ability to maintain day-to-day business operations, including numerous categories such as employment matters, building codes, and public agency contracting, which we will also be closely monitoring and generally opposed to. Third, our customers have long recognized the need to protect our groundwater. This guardianship extends back to 1970s when AD1 was successfully formed and the Allen L. Horton wastewater treatment plan was construction. All advocacy efforts will focus on the groundwater's sustainability both now and in the future, and MSWD and its customers to ensure water delivery infrastructure reliability. And number 4, staff will continue to monitor and provide comments on new and revised drinking water regulations, including the newly adopted from 6, as well as other emerging regulations related to PFAS and other potentially efforts or other potential changes. Next slide, please. Number 5, under federal law, the Internal Revenue Service does not classify energy efficiency rebates as taxable income. Again, through all of our lobbyists and also through other water agencies, we are going to be making a push to see that gets changed. Number 6, while the State Water Resource Control Board has stated that they do not want to unfairly burden disadvantaged communities, we believe that conservation as a way of life rulemaking unfairly impacts our residents. Therefore, MSWD will continue to engage in the rulemaking process initiated by the board and will remain focused on how we move forward further to regulate outdoor and indoor urban water use efficiently. Number 7, as PFAS has gained national attention in the press and the health impacts associated with prolonged contact with subsets of these chemicals, MSWD will continue to support legislative efforts to create an exemption for passive receivers, such as water and wastewater utilities. And we will also support legislation that holds manufacturers and users accountable for cleanup efforts. Policy Directive number 8, MSWD supports water affordability programs. However, the district opposes a water tax or an administratively burdensome affordability scheme or tax that implements these programs. Number 9, aging and deficient infrastructure is an important issue that has been identified in numerous industry studies. MSWD will encourage lawmakers to make available grant and fund matching opportunities, promoting capital investment and infrastructure improvements. Number 10, like many communities, Desert Hot Springs and the surrounding areas face income equality challenges and with disadvantaged and underserved communities. Through the efforts of the district, millions of grant dollars have already been allocated for system improvements, drought resiliency, groundwater protection. We will continue to advocate for funding at various levels of government for these types of projects. And number 11, this is a new one for our legislative platform, if you're familiar with it. This was a suggestion from our state lobbyist that we added specific language to address the clean fleet regulations that require vehicle fleet owners and operators, including public agencies like ourselves, to begin purchasing zero-emission vehicles. However, a key issue is allowing flexibility in the purchasing or replacement for traditional utility specialized vehicles that are at the end of their life, but also vital to maintaining reliable service. MSWD will continue to identify and support opportunities, including state legislation that will expedite and expand the development and execution of funding programs that support this option. And that is it. So again, most of the platform is very similar to what you saw last year, just we made some refinements, but one of the big new ones is that we added that clean fleet regulations information.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments, Director Duff?
Great work. I'm glad we're staying on top of this. And I think that these efforts by our board and our staff and by all of the agencies that we are members to is going to be very imperative, especially over the next years. Thank you.
Vice President? Director Martin?
Yes, excellent work on your presentation as well as what's written in the agenda. So good work.
Director Meyerhoff?
Yeah.
And just to kind of echo Director Duff's comments, great job. And I hope when this is done, I think our previous one is pretty prominent on our website. I think it's just important for our customers to realize the work that's done in Sacramento and DC really affects us, and for us to be proactive and kind of put it out there. This is what we're hoping to focus on. Just goes a long way to show the work that we do here. So,
Yes, we do have a copy of it. If you go to the mega menu, on the bottom right-hand corner in the About Us, there is a place where you can actually click on the link and
okay,
see the document.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 15, election of MSWD board officers for 2025 will be next Monday. Discussion items. Item 16, Critical Services Center and Administrative Building Update. General Manager?
We will be discussing this item next week, next Monday.
Okay. Item 17, Groundwater Protection Program Update.
We will also be discussing this next Monday, but I did want to clarify one point. Director Duff, you made a comment about budget being a concern on phase one. And I think that's, you were probably next month, we're going to be bringing a change order to you both for the contractor and the engineering related to the burrowing owl, the delay and the easement and things of that nature. So yes, we are going to be over budget. We're just not over budget with the legislation that is in front of you this month. So I just wanted to clarify that, but we will also try to address where we are in the phase one, phase two, and phase three as it looks as a whole with the grant funding and things of that nature. While we can get into some of the details about how we're going to pay for some of the O&M and things like that. As you recall, this project was a little bit smaller, but we were also getting only 50% grant, not 100% grant. So we'll try to get into some of the nuances of how we're going to actually pay for some of the operations next Monday. So
go ahead.
Were we going in January, were we going to be having that discussion at the workshop?
I believe so. Yes, we'll have it.
That was my
we'll have it at the workshop, and then we'll also bring it back to the board for final approval.
Okay. Item 18, hexavalent chromium compliance plan update.
Thank you, President Sewell. This will also be Monday, but that will be from our consultant that will talk about some of the questions that came up today. Why are we doing this for some wells? It's not that we're going to be abandoning wells and just turning them off. It's just as we move forward to going to compliance, how we're going, what technology we're going to use at each location, is blending an option in some of those things. And we expect the prices to only get better. But what we're looking at immediate concern is how do we stay as compliant as we possibly can currently. And one of the things going into next year is making sure that we're compliant from a consumer confidence report. So we're going to try to do everything we can. I know we're working with production. We're working with the CNM team and Danny's operations, trying to make sure that we have an adequate capacity. But we're talking about well 35 and bringing those types of things on. That's a part of that, but we'll be able to address that next Monday.
Thank you. Consent agenda consists of the item 19, approval of minutes, item 20, register of demands, item 21, 2025 Board of Directors meeting schedule, and item 22, board compensation for AWWA webinar subscription. Do we have any of these items you'd like to discuss today? Andy? All right. Moving on to director's reports, item 23. Did anyone want to give theirs today? Monday? All right. Item 24, general manager's report includes the finance report and public affairs report. Will we do any of these today?
No, we will do both of those on Monday.
Item 25, district council comments. And no closed session. Item 26, director comments and requests includes general comments, requests for future agenda items, and requests for future meetings. Director Martin? Director Mayala? Director Duff?
I just wanted to thank all the crews that responded to the leak at Bella Vista Elementary, doing everything that they could last week to maintain safety in a very unsafe, unmarked school zone. So I just wanted to send appreciation out to our crews who did everything in their power without any help from the city or anyone else to keep everyone safe there. And I really appreciated that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President?
One quick one. Danny. A cobble is a medium-sized rock that is between 2.5 and 10.1 inches in size. Cobbles are larger than pebbles, but smaller than boulders. There you go.
And I have nothing further with that. The meeting is adjourned.